Thank you very much for this kind introduction and good morning to all of you in London. I'm very sorry that I could not join you physically on the occasion of this launch of the Green Finance Year, but modern technology at least allows us to interact in this way. And my Lord Mayor, Ministers, ladies and gentlemen, it is a great pleasure for UNEP to co-organize this event with the City of London to set out how we make 2016 the year of green finance, not just in the UK as we just heard, but indeed worldwide. I would like to begin by thanking the City Corporation for their partnership and also acknowledge the leadership of the UK financial institutions who have pioneered so many of the innovations in green finance that we now need to take to mainstream. As we look forward to the year ahead, we face many pressing political, economic and environmental threats and challenges. But one thing is clear, 2015 was the year of building a new set of foundations for the global economy and signaling new directions for the financial system. First, we have the Global Goals for Sustainable Development, the so-called SDGs, which in essence plot out an annual investment pipeline that can now be measured in trillions to end poverty and also married to increased prosperity with social inclusion and environmental regeneration. Second, we have the Paris Agreement on Climate Change, which you already heard about, which signaled a shift to a zero net carbon economy of the future and stressed the urgency of improving resilience to climate shocks and mobilize financial regulators and institutions in novel ways, and I would say in unprecedented ways. So if 2015 designed the foundations, it's our task in 2016 to take the practical steps in delivering the shift. And nowhere is this agenda more exciting than in the field of finance. Finance has been a key focus of the United Nations Environment Programme's work for more than 20 years, perhaps surprising to some. When we launched the UNEP Finance Initiative, many of whose founding partner institutions were from the UK and are in this magnificent hall today. More recently, we initiated the inquiry into the design of a sustainable financial system to examine how the rules that govern the more than $300 trillion in assets across the globe can support the sustainability transition. It was a logical progression of our work from initially looking at the economics of ecosystems and biodiversity, the famous work by Lord Nicholas Stern also of the cost of inaction on climate change, which progressed our work into developing a new framework and narrative around the transition towards a green economy. But as a logical third step, the question arose, well, if all of this were to be possible and were to be actionable, how on earth will we finance it and how will the financial system align itself with this shift in the way that we envisage our economies of the future? Nick Robbins, one of the inquiry's co-directors, will be chairing a panel in a few minutes, and I'd like to acknowledge his contribution, but also the major contributions of two of the inquiry's advisory council members from the UK, Lord Adair Turner and David Pitt-Watson, who is also the co-chair of the UNEP Finance Initiative. What I'd like to do in the short time that I have available is highlight three strategic elements. First, the financial system is on the move, and the center of gravity is shifting. What UNEP's inquiry called the Quiet Revolution, its global report, The Financial System We Need, is not just a science fiction title for the future. It sought to capture the innovation and experiments that we discovered across the world and often in financial centers that traditionally people would not have expected to be at the forefront of a pioneering curve of experimentation. Second, sustainability is becoming a key strategic dimension for financial development, with financial centers north, south, east and west engaging in what you could call a new race to the top. Here I'd like to turn to the UK and highlight the key findings of the inquiry's UK country report launched today, which concludes that the UK is indeed one of the global hubs for sustainable finance, but with more to do. And third, new forms of international cooperation are critical to drive this forward, and the G20's focus on green finance this year is a major opportunity. I'll leave to my friend Majun to detail the G20 and to touch on other areas where we can make a difference at the global level with leadership from countries also such as China today. So back to the Quiet Revolution. What is it that we actually found? It's the recognition that sustainability is now moving from being a marginal or optional factor in financial decision-making to something that is increasingly strategic and material for both private institutions and for central banks and regulatory bodies charged with governing the health, the stability of the financial system as a whole. Just a few signs of the shift. The number of stock exchanges committed to incorporating sustainability into their markets doubled in 2015 to nearly 50 around the world. It's a platform that we, together with UNCTAD and others, have helped to establish for stock exchanges to be able to work together to exchange innovations in order to drive the curve of progress. Second, 16 banking regulators in developing countries are incorporating social and environmental factors into risk management requirements, including G20 giants such as China, Brazil, and Indonesia. Next, the burden of proof for investors has changed. The recent fiduciary duty in the 21st century report from the PRI, UNEP, and the Global Compact, concluding that a failure to consider long-term drivers of investment value, including ESG issues, is in fact a failure of fiduciary duty. These and other steps are significant, but we also need to recognize that many of these signs of commitment need to be translated into actual changes in behavior and conduct, the way we do business. This is the reason that UNEP has decided to extend also the mandate of the UNEP Inquiry team for a further 2 years to the end of 2017, with a shift in focus from identifying policy options and innovations to working with leaders across the globe to make the changes required. The race to the top. One of the really exciting things about the inquiry has been seeing the growing number of countries who are starting to incorporate sustainability into their strategies for financial system development. One example is Indonesia, which has launched a 10-year roadmap for sustainable finance with the ambition not just to improve environmental and social outcomes, but also to improve the resilience and competitiveness of financial institutions themselves. Another case is Switzerland, where sustainability is increasingly being seen as a key feature of the country's post-crisis or future financial positioning, an area of strength that could underpin the future competitiveness of the Swiss banking, investment, and insurance sectors. In this burgeoning race to the top, the UK has a very special profile. London is not just a global financial centre, but perhaps surprising to some, also a hub for green finance and sustainable finance. It was striking for us just how many global initiatives are clustered in London, whether on responsible investment, green bonds, unburnable carbon, sustainable banking, climate disclosure, or insurance risk. In addition, UK financial institutions are often at the forefront of seizing the new business opportunities that these trends are now presenting. The Inquiry's country report, launched here today in London, concludes that sustainability can, however, be seen as a sleeping giant of the financial system, with leadership and innovation sometimes being overtaken by fast followers in other financial centres. That's why I would like to applaud the leadership of the City of London in launching its Green Financial Initiative today. Next, the new agenda for international cooperation. We know that national leadership is essential, and in the world of currencies and financial sovereignty, the debates are as alive as ever. And yet, in order to make tangible progress with green and sustainable finance, we need to also leverage deeper international cooperation in order to exchange the experience, but also to develop common approaches to shared sustainability challenges in the global financial system, of which we are all part of. Here again, efforts to build a sustainable international financial architecture are moving ahead rapidly. The UK has once more been essential to the launch of the new task force on climate-related financial disclosure, which was launched by the Financial Stability Board, not least through the vision also of the Governor of the Bank of England, Mark Carney. China has decided to establish a new green finance track as part of its presidency of this year's G20, co-chaired with the UK. UNEP has been asked to be the secretariat for this work, which is also a signal that perhaps 5 years ago would have been unthinkable, that between the G20 as essentially an economics and financially focused platform, we today are working across what are in the past almost insurmountable barriers and fences. Insurance is another area where regulators and supervisors are recognizing the value of international cooperation to better address environmental challenges, and discussions are underway now for the launch of a new Sustainable Insurance Policy Forum. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, much is happening, but let me conclude. Sustainability is becoming recognized as a key feature of a stable, healthy financial system, and there's the beginnings of a race to the top amongst financial centers. 2016 is said to be the year of green finance in both policy and markets, not least through the leadership of countries such as China, but also because of the outcomes that emerge from Paris, from New York, and ultimately, let us also be clear, in the risk perspective in the financial system and the financial institutions themselves. The UK is a key global hub for green finance, and the city's Green Financial Initiative can help to realize London's full potential. So, in conclusion, I would simply say we are at the cutting edge of innovation, and we're also on the frontier of looking at the financial system and the financial and capital markets, now emerging as an enabler, an accelerator, and also a multiplier of the capacity to respond to what is a different set of parameters for the future investment pathways of our economies, be they through the public policy perspective or indeed through the perspectives of corporate investors, institutions, and indeed the market as a whole. Thank you once again for allowing me to join you by virtue of our modern technology, and wish you a very special and fruitful day. We look to you, we look to those of you who in London are leading these efforts to be part of an extraordinary community that will change the future of the world, partly in steps that have a great deal to do with how our financial system will evolve. Thank you very much.